Hello everyone, I'm the narrator. If you're using this video to fall asleep, please like, subscribe and comment where you're from and what time you're listening. Now, relax and enjoy the story. It was a cold and dreary January morning when Emily scrambled to get ready for work. She was running late after snoozing her alarm one too many times, and the chill outside wasn't helping her move any faster. Tossing her scarf around her neck, she grabbed her keys, bag, and a half-eaten granola bar as she headed out the door. In her rush, she pulled the door shut, but forgot to lock it. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder as she got into her car, distracting her from the subtle fact that the latch hadn't clicked all the way. Traffic was heavy, and by the time Emily arrived at work, the nagging feeling she'd forgotten something was already creeping up on her. She brushed it aside, reasoning that it was probably just the stress of a hectic morning. She spent the day immersed in meetings, emails, and endless tasks. The buzz of office chatter made her momentarily forget the uneasy feeling that had lingered during her commute. When the workday ended, Emily was one of the last to leave the office. As she walked to her car, the icy wind cut through her coat, and she quickened her pace. Darkness had already settled over the city, and by the time she arrived home, her cozy neighborhood was lit only by dim porch lights and a street lamp humming at the corner. Pulling into her driveway, she noticed something odd. Her living room light was on. She frowned, pausing for a moment. "Did I leave that on?" she muttered to herself. Trying to recall her morning, she couldn't be certain. Brushing it off as a mental lapse, she stepped out of the car and approached her door. That's when her heart sank. The door was shut, but slightly ajar, its edge flush against the frame but not latched. She froze, staring at it, her breath clouding in the icy air. A sinking dread washed over her. Had she forgotten to lock it? Carefully, Emily nudged the door open. Everything looked normal. The entryway rug was in its place, her coat still hung by the door, and her shoes sat neatly lined up. Still, a growing sense of unease curled in her stomach. She stepped inside cautiously, shutting the door behind her. The warmth of the house felt oppressive, as if it was too still, too quiet. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. Only silence replied. She stood in the middle of the living room, her ears straining to catch any sound. For a moment she thought she'd overreacted. Perhaps she had left the light on in her morning rush and simply forgotten the lock. Then, from upstairs, a faint creak. Her blood ran cold. It wasn't the kind of creak that houses make on their own, those soft groans of settling wood. It was deliberate, calculated, a footstep. Her hand tightened around the strap of her bag as her breathing quickened. Emily backed toward the door, her hand shaking as she fumbled for her phone. She dialed 911, her voice low and shaky as she whispered to the operator. "I think there's someone in my house," she managed. The dispatcher asked her to stay calm and assured her that officers were on their way. Another thump came from above, this one louder, more distinct. She stared at the staircase, the dim light casting ominous shadows on the walls. Her heart pounded in her chest as she gripped the doorknob, ready to run. And then she heard it. Hurried footsteps descending the stairs. A man emerged at the top of the staircase. He was tall and wiry, with a disheveled appearance and wild eyes that glinted in the dim light. He grinned, a crooked, menacing smile that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. He didn't say a word as he started down the steps, moving faster with each step. Emily didn't wait to see what he would do. She threw open the door and bolted outside, screaming for help as she ran down the driveway. The man chased after her, his heavy footsteps slapping against the pavement as he gave chase. She darted across the street to her neighbor's house, pounding on their door with both fists. Her screams drew the attention of the neighborhood, and porch lights flickered on one by one. Her neighbor, Mr. Collins, flung the door open, startled by her panicked cries. "What's going on?" he asked. But before Emily could respond, the man who had chased her stopped at the edge of the driveway. He stood there, his chest heaving, a dark silhouette illuminated by the street lamp. He stared at her for what felt like an eternity before turning and running back toward her house, disappearing inside. Within minutes, police cars arrived, their flashing lights painting the street in red and blue. Officers entered the house with guns drawn, but the man was gone. They searched every corner, finding no sign of him. All that remained was a toppled chair in the kitchen, muddy footprints leading from the back door to the living room, and an empty space where Emily stood shivering in the neighbor's doorway, clutching a blanket someone had draped over her shoulders. An officer approached her, his expression somber. "We'll keep an eye on the area, but it might be best if you stay somewhere else tonight," he said. Nodding, Emily glanced back at her house. It no longer felt like home. It felt violated, like a sanctuary shattered. As she climbed into her car to drive to her sister's place, she couldn't shake the memory of the man's grin or the terrifying thought that he might return.